deal. Now let's go over to the offense here a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about offense. Now we all know that we got Garrett Green, Nico Marchio, a quarterback, and there's a quarterback battle going on. My sources are telling me Nico's been promised the positions, getting the starting job, but Garrett Green looked better in the spring game, I thought.
Right.
Last year, though, Nico looked good in the spring game. He didn't fare so well this year. And another thing too, how safe were the plays they were giving Garrett compared to Nico in the spring game as well? So there's a lot of variables that go into that, and only coaching staff knows what defense was called versus what offensive play was called. To see how they measured up. But what did you see out of the spring game at quarterback, and who do you think gets the starting nod?
All right, I think I'd be remiss if I agree with most people that, watched it with their own eyes. Certainly in the spring game, Garrett Green stood out the most, looked like he had the best performance to me. And the thing that I've been saying on our channel and on the podcast is that when he was out there on the field, I was there. I went up for the spring game and watched it there in person. When Garrett Green was on the field with the offense, it just felt the energy was more palatable. It was different. He had a bit of an it factor to his game a little bit. Just the things that we've seen from him in the past kind of shined through. And that's not trying to harp on Nico or anything. I think Nico certainly has an it factor to him as well and has great potential. And of course, that's just one game, and I can't put too much into a spring game. We've seen spring game standouts in the past that really have always performed well in the spring game, and then come the fall, don't shine. So I think this quarterback competition is long from over. And as you said, Joey, I've heard previous reports as well that Nico was the favorite. And then later in the spring, I was hearing more things about Garrett, and I think those things about Garrett shine through in the spring game. And I think if you're asking me who's ahead right now, it's Garrett Green, but certainly those are going to be your two main factors at quarterback. The only two experienced somewhat players that you have scholarship wise, and you have Sean Boyle, a true freshman, is your only other scholarship quarterback on the roster, with the rest being preferred walk-ons. So I think, of course, it's a competition between those two, but don't expect to hear a starter announced until late in fall camp. I think you want to keep both those guys involved. You don't want to risk a transfer. So whether Garrett's ahead or not, I think this competition is going to lag on until the fall. And, there's been reports, like you said, of Nico being the guy. And if there's been promises made to Nico, then that could be an issue down the line if it does end up being Garrett. That's something we need to think about as well. But I think right now Garrett Green appears to be a little bit ahead to me. Maybe that's his experience, but it's long from over. And I'm trying not to put too much stock into the spring game, because I think also Nico, a lot of the time in that spring game, was working with the reserve offensive line as well. That's something I've heard people talk about, and I think it's a great thing to point out as well, as it seemed like Garrett Green got better pass protection, and Neil Brown himself even pointed that out following the spring game. So while it appears Garrett Green's ahead right now, I don't think the competition's quite over yet. Nico, we know, was a very highly regarded recruit, one of the highest in West Virginia history at the quarterback position. So I think certainly he's going to have his say in this competition before it's all said and done when we get to the first game against Penn State. And I'm excited to see how it turns out, because personally, I think either way, I'm excited to see Garrett Green or Nico Marchio helm in the West Virginia offense in 2023 with their dual threat capabilities and the way this offense is going to incorporate a little bit more of the QB run game, read option, and RPO factors.
Yeah, I think Garrett might have a little bit better vision at running when he's running the ball. I think Garrett has a little bit more vision, but I think Nico's got better vision down the field looking for an open receiver. So I think that's going to be the odds you have to weigh against, So, but now that being said, I don't know if we even get a starter named before the day of kickoff against Penn State.
I'm thinking it's going to be game week sometime, probably.